Welcome to the DIY Toycast. I'm Gordon, and Brett, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brett Barnacle of Aegis Station.
And this week we're just doing a kind of classic format episode where it's me and Brett hanging out talking about what we're working on. We're going to do a little bit of show and tell of our own workflows. But first, Brett, you've been working on some cool stuff. You were just showing me a couple minutes ago. So what do you got
Yeah,
going?
so in my crusade to obtain vinyl that they're not really making anymore, I decided to make my own. So this is the Dolgast. So this is a giant, it's 3D printed, of course, faux Fubi. So, in the vein of Sofubi, it's a big dumb vinyl toy, but all 3D printed with TPU polycaps, so the arms can pop and swap easily.
And you get
Uh,
some added articulation that way with like you get a little wiggle at the
Yeah,
joints.
exactly. So if I don't have to be perfect on, if this was vinyl, the blaster would not clear the foot, but because I get a little bit of clearance, I can clear it just perfectly. But yeah, he's got a big eye in the center for the robotic side, and then that spins around for his organic head. So he's like a biomechanical giant bruiser artillery mech suit. So that's him in, this is metallic red. I think this is by Polylite, by Polymaker is the plastic. And then this is the one I literally just finished, an hour ago. Of this is called Shadow Nebula. And then this is by Flash Forge. And the exact color, I think it's like Cosmic Shadow or something like that. But really, really beautiful, like three color opal effect into glitter black and purple. Yeah. So
And to
there's the
me,
bit.
this is one of the great things about FDM printing over resin printing is that you can run these giant, extremely physically impressive pieces.
Well, yeah, and of course, like I always, double back on is it's playable. Like I could, give this to a kid and I don't
Right.
have to worry about them breaking it. And you get some really fun colors and you don't have to worry about paint.
Mhm.
So, that's why I like it. But what are you working on, Gordon? Anything?
Yeah, so I think I was talking a little bit about it last time and possibly the previous episode, but I continue my adventures messing around with doing figures that are sort of more fully out of the flexible TPU.
Oh yeah, look
So
at that.
this is a green TPU that I particularly like. It's this sort of vibrant lime green. And so I have this is my Mantessa character who has lots of sharp spikes, but then particularly has these what can be very delicate arm blades on her
Oh yeah.
wrists. But in the flexible material, I can just
Oh,
come
look at that.
and move it around. And so, my designs are inherently kid unfriendly, unlike
Right.
Brett's stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas I
Well,
feel
now
like,
now that's not the case anymore.
right, this is reaching the point where I could actually hand it to a kid and, as long as they're over, age of 3, they're not going to put this in their mouth or something. Um,
Right.
it's safe to play with and
Well, that
manipulate.
being said, the urge to chew TPU is very real.
Yeah. And so then this is even more recent, is I went back and took my goblin that I
And
had done a while back,
yeah,
reworked the proportions again to make him a little bit of a thicker boy so that he's a little more sturdy. But
excellent.
I also went
And
in,
also naked, no longer armored.
well, we'll see. That may change, but also that was to because it's the solid green. I
Sure.
figured that
No,
I
I
could color block it out. Also,
well,
it makes him like funnier.
oh, it's way funnier that you're just printing butt ass naked goblins on your printer. Like it's so sick. But I love the homemade cloth form. It's so good. I on also that green for the goblins is excellent.
And what's really nice is that, with the updated
Look
material,
at that.
um, I mean, from the get-go, I had designed my resin figures to be BIOS compatible, but the ease with which you can now
Oh
swap
man,
in
look at that.
parts is like this is a near approaching what you're getting with injection molded PVC figures.
Right.
Now,
And you can set and forget it. If you were doing like 95A sure hardness resin casts, you have to have a pressure pot, you have to have a good silicone mold, you have to have the sculpt, and you have to sit there and monitor it while it does this, and it's a labor intensive process casting. With this, you can kind of just set and forget the printer once you have your tolerances dialed in and you know it's safe. Like you can just walk away and let it print for 50 hours.
Right. And I'm still sort of troubleshooting. I've been running into it's more temperamental, so I tend to get like some little odd collapses on some of the
Hmm.
surface. So I'm still dialing in the amount of infill on these figures so that you don't have any sort of weird warping. And then also uh it may not be coming through, but like there's some weird pilling that I get from both the supports, but then also as the extruder kind of goes back and forth between the parts as it's printing,
Yep.
I'm getting lots of stringing. And again,
That
that's
in my experience, that's been the nature of my use with just that brand of printer is the Flash Forge because
mm,
and I haven't tried it myself. Something to explore would be a different slicer because you're still using Flash print, right?
yeah.
I know Orca is supposed to be very good, and that is supposed to be completely compatible now with FlashForge systems. So, there's always the age-old adage of all slices are not created equally. And a
Mhm.
lot of the old heads that were, writing their own G code and stuff, they always swear by Orca.
Mhm.
And it's free. I don't, it's open source, it doesn't cost anything. So that might be worth exploring to help alleviate some of that. But when I had switched doing TPU to my bamboo system, most of that went away pretty rapidly.
Well, maybe
So,
you may end up talking me into getting yet another printer. I'm now,
uh, oh no, how terrible. But in truth be told, the nice thing if you do get that A1 Mini is you can just buy it and then you can
Mhm.
get the AMS later. You don't have to get them at the same time.
Mhm. We'll see.
And they're cheap. I think they're like 180 right now, which
Mhm.
is despicably cheap for a quality printer.
Oh, it's not the cost, it's the physical space of where to put it.
Well, once you get that, you can just put the Flash Forge away. Just put it in the
Right.
closet, put it on ice for a little bit.
Yeah, but beyond, so the TPU are things that I've been exploring. Something that I also have been obsessing over is these figures that from our friend Jacob Sanchez, Desktop Vandals,
Friend of the pod and
friend of the pod.
exceptional maker.
Yeah, he is, one of the most incredible sort of 3D printing and design makers out there. He uses these are, I think it's like an ABS-like resin, but then it's using the polycap system that Brett sort of drew inspiration from. So it's these
Yep.
little ball sockets, or yeah,
Hmm.
ball pegs, and then a TPU socket that's inserted into the resin piece. So they do that nice sort of pop in and out.
Oh yeah.
And the other really cool thing is these are of the same diameter as a Glyos peg. So if I can find that, yeah, there's Rex. So here's Rex from Toy Pizza. So I can pop that arm out and then pop this one in. And now
Holy
he's got
shit.
a crazy,
Mechano arm.
yeah, Meccano arm that's hyper articulated.
That is insane. Yeah, I that's which is that the Moki bot? Is that the
Yeah, so it's the Mokubot.
Moku bot?
Yeah, which I actually have his old version that he did in I think nylon that was 6 inches tall. So it's really cool to see. He's essentially just gone in and taken his old sculpt and like cut out the torso, cut out the head, shoulder pads, forearms, sort of these overlays over the thighs, and then the shoes. But then there's almost an internal skeleton that's the new joints that he's been using on his Arktron
Arch.
figures.
Oh yeah.
So very cool stuff.
Yeah, his stuff is excellent. I'm dying for him to put out some of the painted Moku bot stuff.
Now I'm gonna have to figure out how to do a good job on this. I'm probably gonna be messaging him when it isn't 2 a.m. in Spain
Right.
for painting
I
advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would just spray it. That's what I would do. Just tape off the poly caps and spray.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should fully disassemble it or just partially disassemble it.
Yeah.
I've had some okay luck using the I really like the Mr. Surfacer from
Hmm.
Mr. Hobby because
Yeah,
it's
that's
this, it's sort of the very fine spray that's good for model kits.
oh yeah, it's excellent stuff.
But yeah, that's generally what I've been working on. And so now, Brett, do you want to maybe do a little bit deeper dive into our tools of the trade? Maybe do you want to kick it off with showing us around a little bit in Tinkercad?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. So let me get screen share going. Gordon's really the IT guy around here, but here we go. So this is the figure we had just talked about, the Dolghast. So here he is in all of his digital glory. But you can see here the insert area where you would place the poly cap in. But typically, what I like to do is I get in here, and this is a half finished form of it. And what we're going to do now is maybe put him into a more squatty position. And I'll just get those. And then take this. And all I'm doing in here is I'm just moving the parametric forms around. I'm not really reinventing the wheel. And most of this stuff I had already done just dicking around last Sunday, which it seems like I do my best work when I'm dicking around with no good idea or I'm under the gun. There's no in between.
I mean, it's just the same thing as like playing around in physical space with Glyos or Legos or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically just Legos for toddlers in a digital workspace.
And so I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, where do you think you got used to navigating like a 3D space with a mouse?
Um, oh, that's a great question. I mean, probably in the MMOs like World of
Yeah, because
Warcraft. That
for
that, that
me, like FPS games and like computer games are definitely how I got used to the like mucking about with a
yeah.
camera in 3D
Well,
space.
well, I always, so over here is like all your parametric forms and stuff, and they have a lot of pre-digital stuff you can pull from, but I always like to use my own and
Mhm.
create my own stuff, even though it's open source and totally okay. I just like to use my own sculpts. But as a kid, I was really into this bizarre Star Wars RTS game called Galactic Battlegrounds.
Mhm.
So that was like my first exposure into a Age of Empires adjacent scenario that was Star Wars. And there was a bunch of submenus and themes and such. So I got really used to using a mouse that way.
Uh,
But what I had found I really fell in love with was World of Warcraft, and for to the bane of many a relationship. But yeah, I mean, I just and I also do 3D sculpting for work and dentistry, so that's it's kind of like second nature. But yeah, when you get into Tinkercad, I mean, there's a million and one shapes. But for example, like if we look here on the original ones, and if this is any audio listeners, this is probably like listening to the paint dry, so I apologize in advance. But maybe the silky tones of my voice will put you to sleep. But I like to print my stuff on a flat surface, especially in FDM. I like to make sure. So obviously, feet will print flat. So in this instance over here, we have something that are flat here. You can just take a square, and this will be
mhm.
a reduction module.
Okay, that's
And,
very similar to what I'm used to in Blender. So you're
yep.
using one shape to cut out
Yeah,
that
exactly.
shape from another shape.
Yeah, and as you can see here, I have an imperfect cut, so you just Z it and go back and combine. Oh, wrong combine. Helps if you hit the right combine.
And
There we go.
so I'm interested, like, would you say like you is it playing with like Legos and Glyos and stuff like that that kind of gives you that shape language of like, well, a torso is just a box with like,
A
you
bunch of
know,
greeblies on it and
right.
post for arms. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, really, in a really hilarious way, it always comes back to Bionicle
Oh
for
yeah, that's
me
perfect.
because all I did as a kid was build with those
Mhm.
after 2001 when they debuted. I mean, that was like, it was chronic obsession.
Mhm.
So, and of course, I did a couple Bionicle homage figures when I was doing the flexi joint stuff last year, but that definitely informs me of okay, the person should stand like this and we'll have it this way. And when you get into like weird mechanical forms, here's a real good example of how I like to do a mechanical form. So I'll just start with a square, and then I'll smooth out the radius, and then I will take a cylinder and drop this down, and we'll move the sides up. So sides, what that does is it takes the polygonal count up, so it gets a nice smooth circle, or in this case, cylinder. And then I'll bevel it down, and then you can take, sorry, my camera's in the way, put this on top.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like real lizard brain. And what I'll do is I'll just take the
This is
snap
not
grid
lizard brain
density.
at all. This is actually like this looks way easier than doing this sort of thing does in
Yeah.
Blender, where it's it's much more hidden behind a couple menus. And I'm sure Blender. Now, are you using a bunch of keyboard shortcuts to kind of
Yeah,
do perform
absolutely.
these? Okay, so that's a part
So
of
what
it.
I'm doing here is like, Control Z is your undo, and then Control C to copy, Control V to paste, just like you would in a Word document. It's
Yep.
very, very lizard brain design language. Tinkercad is truly like a CAD program for children, and
Mhm.
it helps out because I'm an 8-year-old trapped in a 32-year-old's body. But
Now, if you don't know the shortcuts, are those accessible through menus as well?
yeah, absolutely. So everything up here, you can just like
Okay.
up through
Ah,
here.
good. And so they give you the tooltip with
Yeah,
the
and
button.
it tells you everything on what to do. Now, as far as copy goes, I don't know if there is one for that. I have been using shortcuts for so long that I
Yeah.
truly don't remember. But the Tinkercad does have a really fantastic tutorial system,
Mhm.
and it gives you like little badges and stuff like you would if you're just learning it for the first time. But it's totally free, and this is all cloud-based software. So anybody that's interested in getting involved in just digging around and making fun shapes or something like that, they have a tutorial system you can follow along with. And I think I don't know. It starts off with very rudimentary stuff for people that have basically never used a CAD program, all the way up through doing, segments and polyline stuff. But the reason I really like Tinkercad, in addition to it being browser based and most importantly free, is everything makes a clean, watertight mesh that's a low megabyte count when it's exported. So it doesn't take forever and a day once you get into a slicer.
Mhm.
So, like, if I would um, union these and export these out, um, and we'll just open this file. I don't know if it'll show it or not on Bamboo Lab. It might not because I don't know if I'm screen sharing it. But while that loads, let's just check the download of that. And that exports out at a file of 193 kilobytes.
Oh yeah, that's tiny.
Very tiny. And the other reason that I like Tinkercad is everything is done in millimeters, which is the language I use at work for
Mhm.
measurement. If you're not comfortable with that, you can go into your settings here and you can switch to Imperial, or what we use here in the US, or you can go by a brick count. So, and they have zoom speed. I mean, it's very easy to use, and it's also all my stuff is private, obviously, just because that's how I roll. But there is the option to just do blanket open share of your files. And there is a plethora of free files on Tinkercad you can grab and mess with just to screw
Mhm.
around with. And that's a really good way to learn how to do this stuff. So
Yeah. Now, can you import any STL into Tinkercad, or is it only sort
Yeah,
of
as
primitive?
long as it is under 25 megabytes, because it's browser
Oh,
based,
oh,
there's
right.
only so much the browser can render. They
Okay.
have talked about forever doing a local client install version. I don't know when that's coming. I haven't read up on it that much because, truth be told, it's not been a necessity for me, and I just
Mhm.
like having browser based and cloud access because if I have downtime at my lunch at work, I'll hop on here for 20 minutes after I eat lunch and
Right, or you don't have to haul around a several $1,000 laptop or whatever, or
yeah.
iPad.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice too, like, not everyone is a gamer. Like I got into having gaming computers because I would game online.
Right.
And typically when you're doing CAD design, you need an expensive system that does cost a lot of money.
Hmm.
And that can be, modern gaming is cheaper than it was 10 years ago, but graphics cards keep getting more and more expensive because of crypto and this, that, and the other thing with
Right.
tariffs. So if you just have a Chromebook as a student, you can run this.
Yeah.
You can run this on a shitbox laptop. That as long as you can get Chrome to work, you can get this to work. So
And I think, I feel like we've mentioned it a little bit before, but to me, putting some constraints on your designs or sort of your tool set kind of forces you to be more creative
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you
Well,
can't do infinite things.
absolutely. And like everything that I've done with this figure sculpt here was done in Tinkercad. Like
Right.
none of I didn't bring any of this into Mesh Mixer. None of this was done in Fusion 360 or Blender. This has all been in Tinkercad. And it's not perfect, but I don't know that it needs to be for what I'm trying to achieve here. But that being said, the speed in which I can do this stuff, dick around with it, and then get stuff ready to print by doing an easy plane cut here, so I know it's going to build on itself on the printer. I had this thing mocked up and designed on Sunday, and I had the first test prints coming off the printer on Tuesday.
Mhm.
And I work a full time job and have a family, so it's not
Right.
like imagine if I didn't have that stuff, I could just be cranking these designs and prints out. I'd be a real foundry. But yeah, I mean that's like a real crash course into Tinkercad. But the other thing I really like about it is you can do text files. So if you want to do your own emboss thing, and they have generic fonts, but if you like a font, you can go on a place like Font Space and export that font, and then you can run it through a converter to a .svg file, import that, and then
Mhm.
you can have custom fonts in here with your type of, we'll just put like the letter or the number uh, 0 on this, and you can emboss it however you want, have it raised, or if you want it reduced, you can do that too, which is really slick.
Have you used that much in any of your designs? Oh,
Not
you did on
much.
the soda machine, right?
Yeah, the soda
You did?
machine, because when I was doing it, there was 3 or 4 other guys doing similar styled vending,
Hmm.
like sci-fi vending stuff. So I wanted to make sure I had some type of emblazoned thing on the back of mine
Yeah.
that set it apart, other than having legs and the fact that it walked and talked and had eyes,
Hmm.
But that's something I'd like to do in all my stuff going forward. Probably not a bad idea to throw one on the foot of these, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love Tinkercad. I think it's so much fun. And I think when you start getting into design, there's a lot of people that don't look at it as fun. It becomes a job and it's a chore. But I'm not an amazing artist by any stretch of the imagination. I don't draw well. I haven't drawn in many, many years. So I think with Tinkercad, it kind of informs the way I like to create a very similar way where it's sporadic, it's rapid, and it's fun. I don't want to the frustrations of Tinkercad are minimal, whereas
Hmm.
the frustrations of like ZBrush are monumental and they compound very quickly.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's sort of you know, and I feel like with any sort of software or even tool, there's a balance of ease of use versus kind of the complexity of thing that you can do with it.
Right. Yeah, like for example, here's like a little shitbag project I was dicking around with. So here was this really interesting robot dragon soar thing I found a file of. And I was like, oh, this is so cool, but I really only want the head. And I was like, it'll be so fun if I print a little battle beast guy. So I just, copied it, lopped the head off. And, it's not done. I don't know if I'll even get around to this.
Mhm.
But it's a great reference too if I ever want to try to sculpt my own head in Blender.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big fan of like reuse of stuff. If I can help it, I like to do my own thing. But, I think that would be a super fun project at some point is to do like a little battle beast guy.
So
But
speaking of Blender, would you like to see
yes,
my
absolutely.
workflow?
What a segue. But yeah, let's
Okay.
do that.
All right. So I will go ahead and actually I had a thing that I was messing around with earlier. So
This, folks, is basically the equivalent of the cooking channel. Whenever he's like, "We're going to put this into cook," and we already have our demo right here ready, and he pulls it out of the fridge.
right. Well, so I am on my gaming PC with, the LED keyboard and like
Worth noting, I'm on my
RGB.
gaming laptop, so it's but I'm just too lizard brain to learn Blender.
Well, and what I will say is Blender is open source. It's Linux based, so you can run it on a Mac, you can run it on a PC, you can run it if you're a crazy cool like Linux person, you can run it on a Linux computer. It is a installed application, so it's not running in a browser, and so that I
Right.
think that also means that like if you're on a Chromebook, you're not going to be able to install it because you don't have a local hard drive to install to.
Right.
Um, but all that caveats out of the way, it's even over the short amount of time that I've been using it, maybe through, 2 or 3 years, it's gotten noticeably easier and better in sort of the different ways in which you're able to work in the environment. So right now I'm in what's called object mode, which is pretty similar to Brett's workspace in Tinkercad. So I can rotate the camera around in three-dimensional space. I can zoom in or out with my mouse wheel. Primarily, Blender is built as a animation software rather than a strictly 3D modeling software. So there isn't really a scale set by default, but
Hmm.
you can go into somewhere. I think it's under one of these sub menus in the settings, uh, and adjust the units. What
Okay.
I did is I just looked it up on YouTube, found out how to set scale in Blender,
Yep.
saved the
YouTube
document,
University.
and then repeatedly always save from the document where I've set my units to millimeters and never look it up again. So right
Or
now,
you can do what I do and just import a file of something that's relatively the same size as what I want to make and use that as my point of reference.
yeah, or I rescale stuff in the slicer.
Yeah. Right.
But I do have my ruler set to be millimeters, so I can
Oh, perfect. Oh, that's really
drag a
handy.
line to see how wide things are. And so I highly recommend if you're working in really in any of these 3D sculpting softwares is it's out of reach, but I'm gonna get up and get it. So pardon. So what I wanted to show on camera. And for the audio people, I apologize, but this is a digital caliper. And so it's a little, yeah, Brett's got one too. It's a little thing that's on a sliding ruler. And so you could just read off the tick marks off the ruler
Hmm.
and, hold it up to a joint. Like uh, frequently when I was just doing my initial sculpts of resin heads, I just go and measure the ball joint on a neck joint. So, for example, this one for a toy pizza guy is about 5 millimeters, give or take like, a fraction of a millimeter. So what I would then do is in Blender, I'd come in and I would use the shortcut Shift A to add something from the menu. I would add a mesh because everything in here is a mesh. I would add a UV sphere. And right now it's really huge, so I'm not seeing it within the draw distance. So I would use S to scale, shrink it down so I can see it. But I would like eyeball it, to what I think should be relatively the right size. And then I'd come in with my ruler and say, okay, how wide is this? That's 7, so it still needs to be a little bit smaller, shrink it down some more. And actually, if you look real close in the software, each of these little squares is about a millimeter.
Hmm.
So I could even do that. There's probably some better way that I could look up on YouTube of, I could precisely type in somewhere the diameter to get it to be the
Right.
width that I want. But, you know, I'm doing an awful lot of just working with organic shapes and, pretty close is good enough
Well,
is my
yeah,
philosophy.
well, that and there's no perfect metric numbers in nature, and when you're working on organics, anything straight's usually a death sentence. So what you're doing is perfectly good.
And also, once you print this out, you're going to have some variance in the tolerance depending on the material that you're using, depending on the printer you're using.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so you're always sort of ballparking things a little bit.
Hmm.
So in Blender, you have, sort of the object. mode where you can move around and arrange objects. So, if I wanted to say quickly, I don't know, rough out another creature, I could have a sphere for the head. I could duplicate it, make another one that's slightly larger for the torso, duplicate it again, make some thighs, and then I could even change the scale so I could just scale it in one direction, lengthen them a little bit, duplicate it down again. And this is how I tend to rough out things right when I'm starting a new design is I just use whatever shape I currently have available to
A,
myself.
a new design, or as he meant to say, a brand new figure, folks, because he's not just doing a head, he's doing an entire body here. So stay tuned for the figure to be completed at the end of this episode.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. But I would sort of lay out, the relative basically enough to kind of give myself an idea of where everything I want is going to go. And very often I'll come in and delete one of these shapes when I realize like, oh, there's a better way to do this, or it doesn't look quite right. But once I have sort of a rough layout, I'll pick one. So we'll start with a head, and then I'll go in and zoom in and change the mode from object mode to sculpt mode. And so this is sort of a great way to do more organic or detailed stuff. Um, and so since I'm starting out just roughing out the head shape, I'm actually going to come up to the top right here where there's a little butterfly symbol and switch on symmetry, which is great when you're starting out. Brett and I often joke about Jesse DeStasio hating symmetrical digital designs and too much mirroring. But if you're just beginning with your figure and like are wanting to rough out, like we'll make, I don't know, some kind of snout here.
Well, and we do riff on that a lot. And but he always has a great point of it. And symmetry is it's very apparent in everything. But if you look at the evolution of something like Glios from the original founder Onell design, Faden, Matt's original character, was symmetrical, and then he went in and hacked up the figure to give him Scar Faden. So what I like to do is if I'm going to do asymmetry, is I'll do the perfectly symmetrical figure, and then I'll go in and I'll sculpt over it at the end.
Right, and that's sort of what I do here in Blender is I start by, roughing out a shape, uh, do some like ears or horns here. I don't really like that, so we'll leave it there. And so I'm rapidly running out of actually there's too few polygons to
Right.
kind of get the finer detail that I want. So it's at this point that I'll switch back to object mode. And one of the very important things to know about in Blender that's not true in a lot of other CAD stuff is in Blender, there's no inherent scale on anything, which
Okay.
means when you scale something, you want to make sure to apply the rescale that you've done to it.
Okay.
So I would I'm going to do Control A and then apply the rotation and scale. The reason that this is particularly important is because if I come in and do this next operation, which is for my shape, I'm going to add a modifier
Hmm.
and I'm going to remesh it. If I tell the computer to remesh an object which has no scale, it will eat up all the available RAM on my computer
Oh,
and
sick.
crash the computer.
Oh,
Um,
good.
I have lost many figures this way.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, if you end up using this program, you probably will do the same and learn it the hard way. I don't, there's no amount of someone telling you don't do this that won't make you do it eventually. So
Right.
you'll learn the hard way. Hopefully it doesn't take too many times, but coming in and remeshing it, um, actually, it just evenly kind of distributes a bunch of new vertices throughout the object. So for comparison, if I uh, don't have it remeshed and tab in, you can see the little dots are where each vertex is. It kind of looks like something out of Tron or like,
Oh yeah.
or like maybe N64 era.
Yeah, like whenever you have to fight the fighting polygon team before Master Hand.
Right. So low poly stuff. And if I was like making a game, that's actually I would want to keep it low poly, and then I would, you would be mapping textures and sort of
Right.
images onto it versus actual sculpting. But I want to actually sculpt, so I'm going to remesh it. And uh, if I just check on, I can already see that this is going to be way too many vertices, so I'm going to make it rather than adding a new vertice every like 0.1 millimeter. I'm going to do it every one, just so it's
Okay.
not insane. And I don't also, the more vertices that you add, the more it does put a strain on your computer.
Right.
So like
Because your computer has to render all of this.
right. So you don't want to make it do more work than you need. So now,
And I would also assume by having it create more vertices when just say the head sculpt will be done, you go to export this, the memory of it is going to be so high because it is
oh
so
yeah,
much data that it's going to be a lot for your slicer to render if you're looking to print it.
yeah. And so I early on, I would often forget that, how big these files would be. And so what I could do is, I can give them a little bit of a neck here. I don't know what this is becoming. If this is like a dog, it's some,
Dragon Hound.
yeah, it's something. But I'm just, and again, there's a lot of different.
If you round out the points, this is actually becoming the craftsman study crafting.
I was actually watching one of his videos earlier today.
Me too. I was watching him do electroplating.
Yeah, I don't know if we can claim him as friend of the pod, but definitely inspiration to the pod.
I would review him as a godlike being, one of the fierce deities of the creator space.
Yeah, but truly incredible stuff of what he's doing.
Yeah,
Um,
he does own one of my figures, so that's a pretty high praise to know that one of my block sort troopers is sitting in the craftsman's workshop.
yeah, and so here I just tabbed over into what's called edit mode, and I can see that there's, a couple more vertices than last time.
Okay.
And so as long as I'm over here, there are insane people who work primarily in edit mode rather than in sculpt mode. So in here, I can come in and grab individual vertices and like move them around. Or I can do things like, uh, say I select an entire segment of this so that I have a plane here.
Hmm.
I can then hit E for extrude and make like a weird chunk
Uh,
that comes out,
oh, that's really
or,
cool.
you know, and actually I can keep doing this and then like rotate it. And so now it has like, this is,
It's
I don't know
a
what that is.
it's a dog man with a lead pipe through its head. It's a railroad spike. He
Right.
suffered
Well,
an accident on the train tracks.
we'll get rid of that. But if I was working, low poly form, that I would might be working more in just in edit mode. And sometimes
Right.
also like if my geometry gets all fucked up
Hmm.
from trying to combine shapes, I'll come into edit mode and basically try to disentangle all of the meshes that are like cutting through each other in weird ways.
Okay.
Or even I can come in and sort of just see what's going on. Like I remember back when I was doing resin prints, and I would get failures because of intersecting geometries. I would come in and inspect them in edit mode, um, because unlike the slicer for the Flash Forge, uh, Cheeto Box doesn't have like a repair function, I think, inherently, or maybe it's something that you have to like pick from a menu.
I think it's a manual repair function if memory serves. I mean, it's been a few years since I've done resin printing, so it's hard for me to say. But yeah, I don't remember if there is one.
Yeah, and that's something that I remember is resin printing seems to be more temperamental with like you need a very kind of neat geometry. You essentially want like a balloon where, it's just the surface that's modeled. Whereas if
Yep.
you have any
Any
intersections,
yep, anything inside, any vertices, any splines, it's usually death on
right,
model generation for printing. But
right.
now I don't know if that's necessarily true for filament. Because when
See,
you're running it,
I haven't found it that that's the case because then I wonder if
no.
it's just how the G code works or whatever.
Yeah, it's because you have an infill pattern, right? So when you're
Right.
doing an infill pattern, the G code kind of ignores whatever is inside. The only thing that I haven't found out, and this is something I would like to explore, is doing open cavities in designs to do something like putting magnets in it. So
Hmm.
it's sealed inside of the FDM print.
Hmm.
But I'm sure a quick YouTube video would teach me that. But obviously I don't care enough to look it up. But that's something I would like to track down at some point.
Because I've run into a lot of problems where like I'll go online to find a video game or model from a video game and
Right.
want to bring it into Blender and sculpt with it. And they're sculpting in a much different fashion because they don't have to worry about
They don't
intersecting
have to have a water.
geometries.
Yeah, they don't have a watertight mesh to worry about.
And also like they only have to model surfaces that are facing outwards that you'll see.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So the
like
internal structure can be a fucking nightmare.
yeah, no, and I have seen some truly nightmarish things
Oh
trying
yeah.
to look around the insides of game models.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
so I'm gonna make this a little bit, give myself a little bit more to work with now. I'll just go like that. And so the shift key is like a smooth option. And what's nice is it's like on for every sculpting tool, shift is always smooth. And so I
Okay.
think of that like, if I was Matt with his piece of sandpaper while he's messing around with, a little resin head, he's
Hmm.
constantly sanding whatever he's sculpting with his sculpting tools. So like as he's making, cuts or adding little bits of material and letting it dry, to kind of blend it in with the rest of the object. He's coming in and sanding it.
Right.
And that's sort of how I use the smooth. So I could come in here and like this is a kind of incision tool. So I could start to add in, where the eyes would be. So, even make it. And what's nice is on any tool, um, there's sort of the normal way that it acts on the mesh. And then if you hold, I think it's the control key. The
Is
control key,
it does reverse?
yeah, it does reverse. So I can make a little raised thing. And so like, I don't know, this is
Oh, I see. This is the cousin to Jar Jar Binks.
yeah, it is rapidly becoming the
I
cousin.
I think this head needs to remain, and yeah, we need to keep going with this because I would like this as a printed option for a Goliath figure. Give him a unibrow. Yeah, go ahead and connect that. Excellent. Now he's menacing. Very good.
And we could come in and give him some like wrinkles along the way here.
Excellent. Yeah, this
And
is
I'm
actually this is our new mascot for the DIY toy cast.
and I will say one of the uh, issues that I run into Blender is like I very rapidly come in here and like to start like basically drawing on the object to add
Oh yeah.
details. So it's always a good idea to like come out and zoom out and spot check it from a distance because you'll be losing some of this detail when you go into print. And so looking at this now, I can see that like this guy kind of needs some cheekbones. So I'm going to come in and like yank his face from the side a little bit.
Here's a question for you. Can you bring different lighting in Blender when you're in the sculpt mode like this so you could kind of see how the light falls on it from an angle?
You hmm. In
I,
sculpt mode, I don't think so. There are these different render options.
okay, or I'm sure you could actually just export that head and then bring it into another Blender system where you would have like video mode. You could do lighting or something. I
Yeah, or
was
you
just
bring it into the
curious.
slicer. I'm just used to kind of working in this grayscale.
Okay.
And you know, there's so much customization ability in Blender because it's open source.
Oh, it
I'm
seems
sure,
infinite.
yeah, I'm sure you could completely reconfigure your toolbars, change the default background, change how things render. And, I would have no idea how to use someone else's
Right.
version of Blender if they've heavily
Yeah.
customized it.
Do you customize yours or are you just using the stock sculpt mode?
This is pretty stock. The only customization that I've done is the from what I can remember, I think it's just the units thing. Um,
Okay. That's cool.
another another really handy thing that I use when I'm working in Blender that I don't know if you are able to do this in Tinkercad as well is very frequently if I want to sculpt something, I'll bring in a reference image.
No, none of this exists. I only have the privilege of alt tabbing.
So
This is great.
because I like to draw, I can bring in something that I've drawn.
That's so sick.
And so we'll move this over here a little bit. What I could do is I could take this sphere, move it over the head, so it's directly placed over what I drew. It's the same size as the drawn object. Um, we'll remesh this a bit so I can have some vertices to work with. And I don't know what the like there really isn't a real world physical equivalent of this. I guess maybe it's like if you roll a ball of clay in your hands and it becomes softer and more pliable. That's what I'm doing here by adding more
Yeah.
vertices. Is it's more stretchy. So I can come in here now and uh, as well as having it over the image, I can actually switch so that it's transparent and then switch into sculpt mode and then I can come and make sure that it's mirroring, and I can actually just basically use the drawing as like a transparency overlay and sculpt almost exactly to the control art or whatever. So now there's a little
Oh, check that out.
spike on his head. Um, we'll come in with a draw tool and I'll just draw where the eyes should be. And then I'll check my work by turning off the transparency. And so I can see, yeah, that's somewhat close. And so then I could come in here and continue to work a little bit more. We want to make these incisions deeper. And so then I would, if I'm doing my own drawings, I'll frequently draw like a front view, a side view, and a back view.
Hmm.
And then I'll just orient those at 90-degree angles from each other so I can kind of just flip between the drawings and sculpt along them as guides. That also helps me keep proportions good when I'm in working tight in a small area, because then I can always zoom back out and check against the drawing and see is the when I was working on the eye sockets, did the chin get all fucked up or something?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a pretty it's really miraculous what you've been able to achieve by doing this with absolutely no experience using this outside of just YouTube tutorials.
Well, and I think that speaks to the open source sort of nature. I have a degree in computer science, and I feel like to me, this is almost feels like some of that coder and programmer ethos of
Right.
it's like why wouldn't I share the knowledge? Like why wouldn't I share my process and how I'm doing things? Like I'm gonna I'm gonna take everything else that other people have done that's available. Like there's no reason to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's, I mean, that definitely lends itself to the idea of you even wanting to start the show in the first place. Of like, oh, how do we do this stuff?
Hmm. Yeah, and like I very much hope that this sort of inspires people to come in and through whatever means start messing with stuff and making their own versions of things. Another piece that I like about Blender is I can import stuff that already exists. So like Derek was kind enough to share the Sidewinder uh, files so that I can reference them. And so actually
It,
what I was doing,
Derek Bracken, friend of the pod.
friend of the pod, Derek Bracken, what I was doing is I was looking at Kenneth West, other friend of the pod's sculpt that he did here. And so what I was planning to do was I was going to come and there's the very carefully modeled and measured Flyos peg that Kenneth did. So what I need to do right now is I'm going to add another cube that I can use as an object to cut with. Come over and make it small enough so that we can put it right underneath the neck. And so this is very similar to actually what, someone like other friend of the pod, Grant Saunders, Cool Cat Toy Co. might do with a physical figure is he'd come in, take a part and lop it off a figure that he wants,
Right.
so that he can then use it in a kit bash for something else. So uh, this is the cutting with shapes in Blender is something that is a little weird and hard to wrap your head around because when you do it, you use what are called that's getting in the way of my interface here. Okay, so a Boolean operator. uh, and so when I say that, so because I want that peg, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, take this cube, then where the geometry of this cube intersects with the head, that is the peg, and that is what I want. So see if it does it. Ooh, did I just crash my computer? Nope, it did it okay. It thought about crashing.
Sure.
So you can
And now
see now in orange
it's
just the
that's the
Glyos peg.
separated piece. That's really nice. I really that's I mean I understand like Boolean union and things like that. So it's not I speak the language, but to our listeners, it's very interesting how you can take it and just you get to clone that piece and separate it. Whereas if I was doing it in Tinkercad, I would have to make a second copy of it and then lop off the head and trim it, like more like you would with a scalpel by using negative spaces to trim with.
Right.
But
So
this is very handy.
I haven't messed up Kenneth's head here because
Right.
I
You just
just
clone
said
that piece.
right. Um, and what
Excellent.
I actually might do here is I'm gonna,
Just elongate that cylinder.
yeah. And so it looks like it's actually already selected where the cut was made. So I can just go zoop and
Oh man, that rules.
extend the vertices a little bit.
That's so cool. Yeah, this is one of the great parts of Blender is you can do stuff like that. Like Tinkercad, if I would move that x-axis up, or y-axis, excuse me, it would pull the entire thing, which would then change the form of that switch pin.
Yeah. So it looks like I had originally sculpted the, uh, we're going to hide some stuff so I can see it. But if I go in and look at the underside of this cursed armor neck, it's sculpted to accept a ball joint. So I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
go in and put like an actual
I
flat
guess
neck piece there.
yeah, like a flat cylinder that you can attach and switch pin onto. Yeah, I mean, but this has been a really fantastic deep dive so far
Yeah.
into the inner workings of Blender. And it's worth noting that Gordon does have quite the archive on his YouTube already of his Blender work and tutorials. If anyone's
Yeah.
interested, if anyone's even still awake listening to this episode. This is the nap. If you're looking for the episode to calm down with, folks, Gordon, clip what I'm going to say right here. Put this to the front of the episode. Disclaimer: if you want to go to sleep, get yourself some celestial seasonings, sleepy time tea.
Right.
Listen to this episode, the silky tones of our nerds talking about sculpting software, and cozy on up to Dreamland.
Right. Listen, fall asleep to the sounds of talking about Boolean modifiers and intersecting indices.
Ah, yes, watertight mesh. I've never slept more soundly on my pillow.
But I think to bring it back into sort of generalities, a lot of the a lot of the concepts of like how I think about going in through my workflow in Blender was actually kind of formed from playing around with Super Sculpey as a kid.
Yeah,
Like a big thing I remember is when like the Gen 1 Pokemon games came out. And like this is back when like there was lots of hype around this stuff, but like the merchandise was relatively scarce. Um,
right. Yeah, and getting figures was hard. They
yeah,
weren't like they
so
are now.
so I would just make my own out of Super Sculpey at
Oh, that's
home.
so sick. Do you still have any of those sculpts?
I think I might. I think I might have like a Nidoking somewhere. A
If
lot of them
you,
have since broken, but
yeah, if you find that Nidoking, you should definitely ship that out to me so I can scan it and we can make that as a printable file. That would be so sick.
yeah, I should look through some of my old sculpting archives. But you know, I will say like sculpting physically, drawing physically helps give you some of that spatial reasoning, or even like Brett, like what you did with building Bionicle out of Legos. Like
Yeah,
how do you fit parts together?
yeah.
That having that grounding in physical space is really helpful to take when you're in sort of the digital realm doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth noting, like in early, like prior to Bionicle being a thing, I was very into regular Lego. I really enjoyed sculpting with like Play-Doh and stuff as a kid. I really liked that. And my mom was a teacher, so she very much encouraged me to be creative and artistic and stuff. Um, and of course, in dental, but prior to the digital takeover of that and us having to learn sculpting software, we did everything hands on. So it was more like jewelry making, where you're carving into wax, doing wax casting, melting wax or resins out, and then throwing that into gold or ceramics. So it was a very similar process to what toy making was like.
Mhm.
So we used a very similar composition in sculpting wax to what Kenner did when they did the Star Wars line in '77.
Oh, nice.
So it didn't have as much of the urethane backing in it. I think it might be, oh gosh, it might be Green Plastic Tunnels on Instagram. Don't quote me on that, but he did an episode with Toys on Tap, and he had pretty much ironed out what the exact formula was Kenner worked on. It was really,
Mhm.
which that's really getting into the weeds of what sculpting wax mixes were. But that was a fun episode to listen to. If anyone's interested in vinyl toy production or any other toy production, that's a great show to listen to.
Mhm. Yeah, and you know, we're both, you know, heavy collectors of stuff too. And so I feel like that also actively informs whatever we're designing or doing in our on our own stuff in our own sort of digital workspaces. And I always like having, you know, a desk full of toys for within easy reach when I'm working on stuff. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
Brett got a recent pickup,
yeah.
looking at how the joints work, looking at proportions, you know, taking out that digital caliper, measuring stuff for scale. Like I'm always forgetting, how tall should a head be in 1/18th scale. So then I go and get a figure that I like and then measure it with my caliper.
Oh yeah. I mean, my scale's always out of whack, but I always get the blanket apology of it's a robot, so it doesn't really matter. But when you're working in organics, you have to have some semblance of reality, especially if you're going to have it in scale with something like Star Wars or Acid Rain or G.I. Joe. So,
Though you've done some accessory stuff and like you had to deal with scaling those drink bottles that you did for the Star Wars figures, right?
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's a little different because I can kind of just measure a lightsaber hand or a gun hand or a blaster handle, and you get an idea for that. But don't get me wrong. At no point did those first ones come out and say, "Yep, that's perfect." They always came out way too big.
Mhm. But
So,
that's the other advantage of if you're using 3D printed stuff with PVC figures that are a little bit flexible.
well, they get that give on the thumb, yeah.
Yeah, you're not
Uh,
busting off the old like GI Joe thumb hands
no,
or
no, I would not recommend any of those 3D printed drinks I have with a Leonard Core figure from the 90s. That's a recipe to lose a hand.
Mhm.
Yeah, but no, I think that was a very fascinating deep dive into the workflow of Blender. I'm eager to tackle that a little bit. I was really liking that Sculpt SL you showed me, the browser-based one. That's very fun to dive into.
Yeah, so I'll post a link in the episode description for Sculpt GL. It's basically just sculpt mode from Blender
Mhm.
pulled out, made into a standalone JavaScript program that runs in a browser tab. And so you can even sculpt just, what it starts you out with is a sphere that you can kind of deform around with much of the same sculpting tools that I was using in Blender there. And then you can download it as a bunch of different standard file formats, STL, OBJ, probably some other ones too, and then bring it into something else and then use that as a part.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's sweet. I would like to I like to mess around with that. It's funny when I do a lot of workflow stuff to get sculpting done, I have to take stuff out of Tinkercad and like bring it into Mesh Mixer, or I was using some of that Sculpt GL. It's really nice for that because obviously Blender or not Blender, Tinkercad just don't have a healthy sculpt function.
Mhm. And I think that's another sort of nice general practice to have is like you have your go-to tool that sort of does most of your workflow. And
Yeah.
then as you become sort of more well-versed in it, and then eventually start running up against limitations or specific things that you wanted to do, kind of adding another tool to your toolkit rather than having like, this insane toolbox of stuff. And so there's so much shit in there, you don't know which piece tool to use for any given task.
Yeah, it's the curse of choice, right? It
Right.
becomes way, way, way too involved trying to track down what you need to even work with. But yeah, I mean, I think Tinkercad's been a lot of fun, and I get I've gotten negative feedback on the stuff I make with it, of course. Some people were like, "Oh, it looks like kid shit." And it's like, well, yeah, that's what's fun to me. So of course it does. Sorry, my stuff doesn't look like a NECA figure, but you can buy that at Target.
Mhm.
Why do I need to make that? You can go buy it already.
Well, and I like it that it adds, the limitations actually sort of dictate some of your style to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I very much lean into my weakness of that program, and I think it's worked out in spades.
Whereas I will say like I my strength is also my weakness in that the hyper obsessive detail means that I often end up with like weird bumpy surfaces or particularly when I take it into the printed realm, getting supports so that they're correctly laid out. I get a much less uh, kind of clean surface finish than you do on a lot of your stuff, just because of the nature of how I sculpt and my workflow. Um,
Yeah, and I think a lot of my like it's for me it's not even limitations or it's like my design philosophy always starts with how is this going to be able to get into production, and
mhm.
how is this going to be an item I can even run on a printer. That's what my first step is. How is this going to function? Not, oh, the sculpt looks amazing, I'll figure it out down the road. Like my first
Yeah,
thought process is
I'm
always,
that's where I'm
okay,
working from. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do
yeah.
a cool drawing. I'm going to import the drawing into Blender, try to sculpt sort of how this should look in 3 dimensions, and then we'll make the joint cuts later, and hopefully it will work out.
Well, I think what you're doing is the correct path, because if you were working in like actual factory production settings, you can just inject. You're just going to, you have enough back force that you're just going to shoot hot plastic into a cavity and it's going to work out. Like whereas with printing it with additive manufacturing, I always think about it, but that comes from my background and what I do for a living with manufacturing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. It's
No,
just
it's
sort
it's
of
just it's
your
our opposite ends of the spectrum of design sensibilities.
right.
But I think us linking up on different projects. That's how it's always we've had such success working together is
Right.
you have these insane design philosophies that always translate to something organic and crazy and monstrous that I could never hope to make. And then you'll be like, oh my God, how is this going to work? I'm like, oh, simple. We'll just do it this way. You angle it 40 degrees, you get these supports at this number. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, Brett made it magically work on the printer.
Right. Well, I mean, like, over here in the corner, I have the
Baby Light
original,
Horse.
yeah, resin prototype of the Glide Horse.
Yeah.
And so this is before I had the FDM printer. I did the full sculpt and, actually, friend of the pod, David White, had sculpted the saddle that goes on it. But just to kind of get the sense of how the layout would work, I like made a joint cut at the head and the tail, or not even a joint cut, just a cut so that the pieces could be printed separate,
Hmm.
and then assembled. And so I did this to make sure that it would like work once I pushed there's some pins that like just friction fit into sockets. So I did that in resin. It all fit together okay. And then I'm like, hey, Brett, can you print this for me and make it like, whatever, 7 times as big so that it's
Yeah.
like the size of an actual like dinosaur toy. And like I wouldn't have been able to do that, had we not made a connection at Toy Pizza Con and then, started to do some collab work. And now I have my own printer so I can run as many live horses I want.
Right.
Like I have filament for.
Yeah, which that was a very fun, to get a little nostalgic about it. That was a very fun side quest we were on of, I'm going to put these in the store and everyone's going to go bananas for them that was currently interested in Jagged Age at the time. And of course, this was all done with Jesse's blessing of Toy Pizza.
Mhm.
But boy, I was working like a dog because at the time I only had the one printer,
Yeah.
so I was just banging out these live horses. But it was really cool because us both having identical printers. Once you got a new one,
Yeah.
and you were running into orientation issues, I was like, oh, I'll just give you my print file with a G code,
Mhm.
and it plugged and played, and you were just off to the races. And that's perks of me klepto saving every single print file that works in an archive.
No, and to me, that's one of the most exciting things about 3D printing, and then also like a community of makers who sort of help each other out
For
is like,
sure.
you are like whatever 10 hours away from me,
Yeah.
and I can, text you about something that I'm trying to troubleshoot on my printer, and you can just be like, oh, let me look at it on my slicer software or something.
Right.
Or we can even share, full figures. I can print one here and you can print one over there.
Yep. Yeah, it's that has been a real treat. Now once you get the bamboo, then it's going to be a completely different story because that printer is just going to work and you're not going to have problems. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. Bamboo, if you would like to sponsor this, please, we would like free printers and free money.
But speaking of sponsors, we do have our sponsor, Super 7.
That's right.
Brett has his affiliate link, which I'll put in the show description.
That's right. Be sure to get these new Micronauts figures that are out.
Right. Yeah, I
That
think,
David White of MechaZone fame did do some sculpting on, so that's super sick.
yeah, those would be the ones that I'd probably highlight as well. We are in spooky season, and I will say that the Reaction Plus Universal Monsters also look pretty fun to me.
Yeah, this rule. I'm a big fan of the Creature of the Black Lagoon. That's always been my favorite.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, he's the unpopular one, but I like the big scary slimy fish man.
Excellent. All
Yeah.
right.
Is there anything else you want to cover, Gordon? Anything? Any pickups? Any pre-orders coming in you're excited about in the collecting space?
Hmm.
Any holiday? Any upcoming holiday plans for the spooky holiday?
Spooky holiday. I've been watching a lot of fun horror movies. I've been watching this fun Spanish horror movie series called Record,
Oh,
which is
okay.
like it's sort of like it's like a zombie outbreak movie, but it's also like they're zombies by way of demonic possession. So that's been
Oh,
kind
that
of
sounds
fun.
great. That sounds
So
sick.
recommend that. It's all on Tubi if you want to check
Oh,
it
dude,
out.
Tubi's the best.
Yeah.
That's where I watched In the Mouth of Madness at with
Oh,
Sam
excellent.
Neill.
Sam Neill.
Recommended by you and Jesse D'Stasio. What a
Yeah.
fun movie.
What an awesome movie. What an
Totally
insane
bad shit.
performance. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I was watching it and I was rebuilding a bunch of Glyos out of my bin because I was, watching it alone. My wife had gone to bed and I'm just thumbing through, putting stuff back together that had been just in build piles for ages. And like I would not pay attention for 5 minutes, be like, wait, well, how the fuck did this happen? And I have to rewind it. I mean, that movie really demanded some attention that I was not giving it.
Yeah, the kid turning into an old man on the bicycle is one of the most genuinely disturbing
Oh,
things
it
I've
was
seen in a
wild.
movie.
Yeah, no, it was very fun. I liked when the girl starts doing that weird contorted thing, and Sam Neill's range of meltdowns is so good in that movie. I mean, he's
Yeah,
just a manic nutcase at the end of it.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was very fun to watch. And then me and my wife just watched Jeepers Creepers 1.
Oh yeah, I had seen that not too long ago. That's fun.
Yeah, it's okay. It's very 2001.
Yes.
Very early aughts. Just not terribly scary. Just shock factor.
Hmm.
That's before all the gore porn really takes off at the Saw series. But it was fun.
Yeah, and then looking ahead beyond spooky season, I'm excited for all the stuff that the Glyos makers have been hyping up for Legion's Con. There's
Oh
a
God,
lot of
we're gonna act stop this episode here, and then we're just gonna get a complete follow up episode of this of just talking glass for the next hour.
yeah. All right, so then maybe we'll we'll leave it here for now, but thanks again for watching the DIY Toycast. You can find me on Instagram at Vladimir the Badimir. And Brett, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Aegis Station on Instagram and aegisbazaar.bigcartel.com to check out any of my figures. There's some backstock still of Gordon's printed figures in there from 413 Fest. And I should, if you're interested in my Fofubi printed figures, I should have some of these up, I don't know, in the next week or two. So keep an eye out for those. Smash that like button, hit that bell, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Hell yeah. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.